Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're watching from. If you are watching me on YouTube, welcome to my YouTube channel. Kindly subscribe, like, comment, and share my videos. Let's engage. My name is Fumi Omoshri, and I am talking about trauma awareness. As a PhD student, this is my research area, how trauma can affect communication in the classroom. If you're a teacher, please come forward. If you're a lecturer, please come forward. Parents too, please come forward. Today is story time. Story time. 2 years ago, in my former school, working as a school principal, I had an experience with a traumatized child. And I realized that the dumb parents at the time didn't know how to handle the case. So there was a lot of, noise, brouhaha. I just went out, what's going on? And then the dumb parent was yelling at this child. I said, oh, please, don't worry, just come in. And he came into my apartment. The child was wailing. She was a female student. She was wailing. And I asked the dumb parent, what really happened? Oh, she started narrating the story angrily, of course, that the student took a scissors to cut her uniform, her old uniforms that she's no longer using. And those uniforms, they wanted to give them to indigent students and all of that. But because the student didn't want to share her belongings, she decided to cut those uniforms into pieces. Ma'am, do you know how much those uniforms cost? And she went on and on. So I told her to excuse us. She did. I locked the door and, I told the student to sit in the living room. And she was wailing. So I told her I had to calm her down. I said, this is a safe space, right, that I've created for students to come in to talk to me on any issue, either personal or concerning the school. They should feel free. Now, these students started wailing, and I said, no, your loud cries will actually attract other students to my door, and they will come and peep, eavesdrop. So, don't cry. Just let me know. She has narrated her own, the part of her own part of the story. I want to hear from you. And then she said, oh, that she took scissors to cut the uniform, and then she used some foul language. Also, she was caught in the restroom saying she wants to commit suicide. She wants to, she was just using so many words, right? So I now told that, and I had to calm her down because I am trauma aware, and I've seen it that, oh, that behavior was triggered, right, from an event. So I asked her that, what really happened? Trauma is a significant issue, right, that arises from neglect, from violence or sexual abuse. And sometimes as teachers, you can, re-traumatize these students based on the detailed descriptions that you give on all these topics, maybe on sexual abuse or violence, which, triggers the traumatic experience, right? So I asked her some questions, and then she said, oh, they were having a topic, there was a class discussion in the civic education class, and she just remembered the time that she got home and saw a divorce certificate, and her parents hid it from her, and she was really mad at her father that with all her mom has gone through, and all of that. So how our father treated them while they were little and all of that. So from her point of view, I saw that she was defensive, trying to defend her mother, to fight her battles for her. And that was what made her go berserk that day. So I calmed her down and decided to use the trauma informed approach, because I am trauma informed. And one of the trauma informed approaches is using a trauma informed language. How do you use trauma? What's trauma informed language? Trauma informed language is the way you communicate with students or with anyone that has experienced trauma, right? You don't use blame language. You don't use blame language. Blame language, an example of blame language is what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? But if you use a language like, how can I help you? It shows support. Okay, so trauma informed language emphasizes empathy and support. Don't also forget I have also created a safe space, a supportive environment in my office and in my apartment for students to come in, right? And also I ensure that there's a self-regulation skill for traumatized students, and one of the self-regulation skill is breathing techniques for students to, traumatize students to breathe in, breathe out, inhale, exhale, till they get better, right? So after that incident, I informed the student that there are consequences. Now, school owners, please come forward. Don't think that because those students that have experienced trauma will get away with their misbehavior. No. Because traumatized students might even cause bodily injury to the teachers or to their classmates. That behavior must be punished. But you see, trauma-informed approach, right, is for us to, take the students, to navigate the students through the process of restorative justice, to use the language that will not re-traumatize them, but they will face the consequences. They will face the punitive measures. If they have broken school rules, then they need to face the consequences. But in doing that, you should not use the language that will re-traumatize them. You have to do that with love and empathy. And if you know you're unsure of handling such, you have to refer to a trauma-informed professional, right? Like therapists or psychologists or school counselors that are being trained in such areas. But students, traumatized students who have crossed the line, crossed the boundaries, they must be punished. And of course, I punish this student and she knows that, oh, I broke the school rules. I actually crossed my boundaries. I showed the care, trauma-informed care, right, during the punishment and even after the punishment, because after that episode, I had to refer her to a therapist, and after then, there was no episode like that. And that also sent a signal that no one is going to hide under trauma to get away with bad behavior. I hope we'll be able to apply this in real life situations, whether at home or in the classroom. I'll see you in my next video. Thank you very much for stopping by. Thank you. Bye.